Hello. Recently, we saw some kind of bittersweet news about Brendan Fraser, a huge star, at least, what, 10, 15 years ago?
More.
More like 20
years
Late
ago.
90s.
Who's somewhat dropped out of circulation. And there was a great GQ profile this weekend talking about kind of what happened and had some explosive accusations in there. And so today, Alonso Duralde of The Wrap and Linoleum Knife and Christy Lemire of ChristyLemire.com and RogerEbert.com and I are going to talk about that.
So yeah, he's going to be in the new FX miniseries Getty, which tells the same story as the All the Money in the World, but
he's Mark Wahlberg.
He's playing the Mark Wahlberg character that Danny Boyle is putting together, and so GQ goes to talk to Brendan Fraser, like, hey, Brendan Fraser, what happened to Brendan Fraser? Fraser, you find out a lot about his family life and other, sort of concerns he's been dealing with, but then eventually kind of talks about that incident that had been covered in the press at the time, which was that the then president of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association had sort of grabbed his ass in a weird way and later apologized for it, but never completely copped to it. It was all very weird. And Fraser talks about it as being a fairly traumatic event, and it was basically sort of his Me Too moment.
Right.
And
at the time that, in the article he mentions, there's a lot of stuff going on in his life, right? He'd been divorced.
Right.
And one of the things that was telling in this that I hadn't realized is that he had been going through multiple surgeries and multiple kind of hospitalizations and
from all the stunt work he'd been doing over the years.
That he's been doing over the years, and that was taking its toll. And he, at one point he talks about he felt like the horse in Animal Farm, where they just keep asking him to do stuff, and by God, he'll just do it because that's his job.
Right.
And it's this, and he's got a son that he says is on the autism or the autism spectrum. And so I think all of that, probably gets wildly aggravated by somebody like HFPA President Philip Burke, who's alleged to have grabbed him and molested him or assaulted him.
Yeah.
He didn't just grab him.
Right.
He does more than that.
Didn't just grab him. And I can only imagine how that feels, coupled with like the roles start drying up, right? And it's, I strongly recommend looking this article up on GQ.
It's a really frank celebrity interview. It just sort of reminds you how sort of banal most celebrity interviews are, where people kind of talk about a few things or whatever, but like Brendan Fraser just like lays it all out. This is a no F's to give interview.
Well, also the writer gets a lot of access and a lot of time that I think the vast majority of celebrity journalists are never afforded. And it seemed like he was ready to talk, and he was ready to talk to this person. And it's not just a confessional, it also puts his whole career into perspective, and it points out very astutely that it was easy to take for granted what Brendan Fraser was really good at. Because a lot of the movies he did were dumb comedies, like Encino Man or like George of the Jungle or whatever. And you realize from reading the story, like these crazy scenarios made some vague bit of sense because he grounded them.
Right.
Like he's our conduit. He's like he was stuck in these roles where he was always like the wide-eyed, like, what's going on? And he did that really, really well and really consistently, even like in The Mummy, the first couple of Mummies.
Sure.
And you realize how that is tougher than it looks, right? It's easy to tool on these movies, but
he had a wheelhouse.
Yeah, and then he can do something like Gods and Monsters, which is great.
Absolutely.
Or like School Ties when he was very young. So he had more range, and thankfully he's getting an opportunity to show that again. But yeah, it's a very sad and very honest story.
I think it's great that more people are coming forward and telling their stories, in a context in which they're being listened to and understood and believed. And yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of put this kind of tragic cast on the, hey, whatever happened to stories, because now we find out what happened to them, and it's like, oh shit, no wonder they stopped working, because, like Annabella Shore's whole thing about like, yes, Harvey Weinstein came to my house and raped me, allegedly. And, it's not just that, the roles dried up or they got too old or whatever. Sometimes they got fucked up by this industry and the people in it,
And it's
terrifying.
a man making these confessions, and there have been several men who have come forward.
Yeah, Terry Crews.
And Anthony Rapp.
Anthony Rapp, absolutely.
And I wonder, is there a difference in the way society perceives male versus female roles that makes it different or makes it harder for a man to make that kind of an acknowledgement, it's a challenge to traditional notions of masculinity.
Well, yeah, I mean, not to take anything away from Anthony Rapp's bravery in coming forward, but I think for straight guys, like the idea that you were the victim of another guy's sexual assault, that's got to be tricky. That's got to be like, what does this make me sound like? Am I now weak, in a way? Like I'm sure that plays into it.
Yeah, and what is like locker room joshing around versus like my body has been violated, and how do you draw the line, and who's going to believe you, and which is all that is true with women to some extent as well. So yeah, I was really appreciated his honesty and his bravery.
Yeah, it's, I look at that story and I think we were doing some of those stories ourselves back at Rotten Tomatoes years ago, and the first one we did was about Wesley Snipes. And
the Whatever Happened To.
The Whatever Happened To. And Jen Yamato, who's now at the LA Times, had done a lot of research and wrote this great piece about how basically he'd gotten this crazy bad tax advice, and it kind of really, really screwed up his career. And then we started looking at other candidates, and part of why we stopped doing it is because every time we'd look at actresses, the answer really boiled down to, as far as we could tell, she hit 40. She hit 40. But it'd be interesting to go back to that now, knowing what we know about people like Annabella Sciorra or Mira Sorvino or whoever,
Ashley Judd,
or Ashley Judd, or even Rose McGowan. It'd be really awful, but probably necessary to go back and look at that. It's, then this story also makes me think about, here we go with the HFPA again.
Oh, there's always something. Yeah. And Philip Burke, who was the president for a long time, who was he's accusing of doing this to him, acknowledges that something happened, but makes it sound like a playful little pinch on the butt.
Yeah. It's being blown out of proportion.
But allegedly, the HFPA is going to do an investigation, which I feel super good about. I think it's going to be really thorough, and they're going to figure this out, and the truth will be exposed.
Right. So, we get jaundiced about the Hollywood Foreign Press Association because they get relatively secretive about who they are, and it's this small group, 90 people that vote on the Golden Globes, and they've got this big influence. They have they put on a hell of a show, they put on a hell of a party, but
they have a giant cultural footprint for being such a small organization, and an organization of people that we're not always sure who they are or what their qualifications are.
Right, and so when you see something like, the president of the organization getting accused of something like this, it doesn't, unlike, say, other organizations like, well, this one to me, it makes that whole organization seemed rotten to begin with. So that's right.
And should they be the ones investigating this? Shouldn't some outside entity be the ones doing it?
Oh, and maybe that's what's going to happen. I don't know. I hope so.
So while we're talking about him, I've always enjoyed a lot of even the dumb comedies that he did. But do you have a particular favorite Brendan Fraser movie?
I think Gods and Monsters, because it's totally challenged your notions of who he was and what he could do.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was a turnaround role for me. I'm trying to remember. He did a film for director Percy Adlon. That I can't remember the name of it, but he's quite funny in that one, and it's not the usual sort of like wide-eyed, I just came out of the jungle / bomb shelter / a Canadian mounted police role that he would always wind up playing.
It's a wheelhouse.
Yeah, I loved The Mummy. I remember seeing The Mummy in theaters and thinking, this is gonna be this cheap knockoff of Indiana Jones, which, to be clear,
it is.
But it's good. It's really fun. He and Rachel Weisz.
Who knew Rachel Weisz was going to wind up becoming Rachel Weisz after that?
I think that they had great chemistry in there. That's a really fun movie.
What year did it come out?
Oh, it's early. Sorry, keep talking.
You keep talking. We're going to look at IMDb.
I'll keep talking while you guys. This is just like my home life, where I'm saying something and then everybody
totally
else at
listening.
home is just on the phone.
Mrs. Winterbourne.
No.
Well, you guys have
we'll figure
idea.
it out.
Not Gods and Monsters. So who was the director?
Anyway, we'll figure it out.
I think it's younger and
younger. Here we go.
Younger and younger. The
Percy
director.
Younger and younger.
With Donald Sutherland and Lily Davidovich.
Hard to find, but an odd little fun
Hard to find
movie
even
from the
on
director
the
of
web.
Baghdad
1993.
Well, so I think I speak for all of us. We wish the best of luck to Brendan Fraser.
Yes.
And I kind of want to now check out the Danny Boyle series that he's working on. I think that'll be fun.